Capitalism is a complex thing. In the public benefit corp model, it's a pretty big freaking deal that we have the largest AI company in the world that seems to be really at the frontier with OpenAI, embracing that model. So it's pretty cool that there's a movement for the public good associated with the capitalistic aspect of these AI platforms.
Service is what you provide for someone. Hospitality is how you make someone feel. Federal workers have not been paid. And I was like, so what can we do? And we all got together, crunched some numbers. And so we were just feeding people. Anytime somebody opens up their table, breaks bread with you, shares food with you, I feel like it's them saying, I want you to live longer.
Right.
What we're training and what we're going to use AI for, what AI is going to think it's for, is a huge mirror on who we are as people. It takes effort for us to evolve now because we don't have natural predators other than ourselves. And so what's passed on is intentional and not accidental anymore.
Yeah.
You just take care of each other. And then you really think about it. It's like you have 10 people at that table, 9 people are feeding you and you're feeding 9 people. But you have 9 people watching your back if you're just watching everyone else's back.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Love Conquers Fear podcast. I hope you really enjoyed that episode with Patrick Genpinfo. He was amazing on that. It was a really very spiritual discussion. So if you missed that, make sure to tune in to the last episode. It was awesome. And then I really, really loved the episodes with JD Messenger, who's publishing my book. I was literally just on a phone call with him. And wow, the plans for Love Conquers Fear, Humanity, AI, and the Age of Abundance for All are really coming along well. The book now, I've written more than half of it and currently finishing up the chapter on capitalism. One of the things I just want to say as a cool PSA is that, I'm not a fan of everything OpenAI is doing. I just want to be clear on that. Like I think that the way that it talks to people in using the I, as a subject, makes some people think they're talking to a sentient being. And Mustafa Suleyman has really been on the case on this. He's the CEO of everything AI at Microsoft. And I think that that's a danger, right? We've seen teenagers fall in love with a fake female on the other side. We've seen some teenagers commit suicide. But at the same time, I do want to say that I do think it's a big deal from a capitalism perspective that OpenAI has now successfully converted into a public benefit corporation. Data.World, my past company that ServiceNow bought on 7/7, was one of the first PBCs and certified B Corps, and we're trying to create a bit of a movement there for tech. B Corps are all over the place with CPG. Patagonia is probably the biggest stalwart of the B Corp moniker. And it is a new method of capitalism. It's a much more evolved method of capitalism where it looks at all stakeholders. And one of the things that OpenAI did in converting to this PBC structure is they seeded the OpenAI Foundation, which is the nonprofit part of it, with 130 billion of OpenAI stock. Okay, so what is the OpenAI Foundation really dedicated towards? It's dedicated towards healthcare for all. Well, that very much aligns with abundance for all, which is what this whole movement that I'm really focused on starting with Love Conquers Fear is all about. It also is focused on AI safety. It's focused on access to artificial general intelligence for all of humanity. These are good things. So, containers are a challenging thing. Like OpenAI recently announced that it's going to allow erotica. Well, that's not going to go very well, right? They say they're going to age verify. Well, we know how easy that is to get around and how ubiquitous porn is online. And I'm not a fan of porn. Don't watch any porn myself, but that's something that is also polluting teenagers. Young men in this country. I'm writing a chapter on the objectification of women. And, young men in this country, when they watch a lot of this stuff, they assume that that's the way that you treat a woman. And women don't want to be treated that way. They want to be treated with a soul to soul level connection, an act of real intimacy and love, not just treated as a sex object. So I just want to say, like, capitalism is a complex thing, but the B Corp model and the public benefit corp model, it's a pretty big freaking deal that we have the largest AI company in the world that seems to be really at the frontier with OpenAI, embracing that model. Other B Corps in the space are Anthropic, that's also B Corp, and XAI, which is yet another Elon Musk company, is also a B Corp. So it's pretty cool that there's a movement for the public good associated with the capitalistic aspect of these AI platforms. Now, technology is always how we use it, and it will always be that way. And the most challenging part of the book that I'm writing is part 3 on transformation, which is how will humanity transcend into this age of abundance for all versus destroy ourselves, where we have enough nuclear weapons to destroy all of humanity many times over. The actual numbers, we have 50 times the amount of nuclear weapons today that would be needed to destroy all of humanity, 50 times. And, this is what the Department of Defense calls MAD, or mutually assured destruction. And it really tells you that we're playing psychological tricks on each other where we hijack the amygdala. And last night, Jason Karp gave a phenomenal speech in our community he was on episode 3, and he's the founder of Hue Chocolate. He gave a phenomenal speech at Shalom Austin about how companies are always hijacking. The biggest companies, when they get to a certain level capitalistically, tend to devolve in a way where they're focused on our basospheres. And he talked about all the toxins being poured in to our bodies from food companies that have algorithmically sought addiction. And then the pharmaceutical companies that benefit from that, to try to help people, now that are addicted to these foods. And we have a chronic problem in America. We spend around 2 to 3 times the amount on healthcare than other developed countries do. And these other developed countries, they don't have these additives in the food. So he gave a very impassioned speech about that. And it's something it's top of mind for me in recording this for you today, in that capitalism is tricky. But if we lead with good intent, we're going to end up in good places. And so, as complex as it is, I do want to applaud OpenAI, Anthropic, and XAI for leading with at least having a B Corp model, a public benefit corp model premise. Now we'll test them over time and see if they actually live up to those values. And that is always what companies are about. They also have souls. And will they allow love to conquer their own fear? And will they put people over profits? We'll see. Let's see what stands the test of time here. I'm really excited today to talk about my guest, CK Chen. And welcome, CK. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Good to have you here, man.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
I love you a lot, brother. We've
Yeah.
known each other for
Long
quite a while. Yeah.
Right, well.
Yeah. So let's start out with all the amazing things you've done for Austin, because you're really the fabric of our community. So why don't we start with talking about your beautiful restaurants, one of which I still go to a lot, Wu Chow.
Yeah.
So
Thanks. It's interesting, the restaurant side of what got me into it really is the hospitality side.
Yeah.
And I think that I really recognized that food was a medium upon which to kind of deliver hospitality to people, right? There's a great saying, I believe it's in the Unreasonable Hospitality, that says,
Is that the Danny Meyer book?
No, Danny Meyer, Setting the Table.
Okay.
He says that the service is what you provide for someone. Hospitality is how you make someone feel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? Danny Meyer might have said. I mean, they all kind of blend together.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
similar,
Yeah,
very similar,
very similar.
very
But
similar in the
it
mindset.
is rooted in love, right?
And rooted in love,
Yeah.
and rooted in this thing. That's like I call that's like a. I said to a friend the other day. I was like, I'm a purveyor of happiness. Like that's what we're
Yeah.
trying to do is to
Yeah.
try to really deliver whatever it needs to be
Yep.
delivered that can make whatever the experience that you're trying to experience at that moment
Yep.
elevated and escalated and so on and so forth. Like, you know, my family is the type of family that celebrated with food and we mourned with food and
Yeah.
you know, and everything was kind of around this kind of backdrop of just providing it. And so for me, you never know what someone's going through or what they're dealing with, and at that moment, if we can deliver it whatever they need it to be, it can make the situation better for them. And that's what I did, and I kind of really love that. And so yeah, the restaurants we are still very much learning how to live in a post-pandemic world. I
Yeah.
think that there's a lot of things that happened during that time that created some decisions that were made then because that was what was needed, and now we're kind of dealing with that. Like for instance, you know, I jokingly said that, you know, we've invited in this monster of delivery services and stuff into our midst, and now we're trying to deal with it because now we're trying to convince people to go back out to eat again.
Right,
We're like,
right.
you don't have to stay at home, but everyone is like, I love being at home now. Like,
Right,
why, if I can have your food at home, why do I ever need to leave? And it's kind of
Doesn't
like,
taste as good.
well,
Oh,
I agree, but
I mean, it's so much better when it comes fresh out. It's just amazing.
the convenience will, I mean, look at how rampant fast food has become. I
Yep.
mean, you know, they'll sacrifice 10 minutes for, you know, for it to be faster,
Right,
you know,
right.
for quality of food to drop tenfold, you know? So,
Yeah.
yeah, it really is. And I love what you were talking about earlier, as far as this people over profit and this kind of, the thought of conscious capitalism has really been in my head for the last few years, like really strongly. And like, for instance, we just launched November 1st is at the 11th hour, you know, on the 30th, right before Halloween is like 11 o'clock at night, you know, texting my team. And I was like, people are going to lose SNAP benefits. Federal workers have not been paid. And I was like, so what can we do? And we all got together, crunched some numbers. And so we're giving away, we were just feeding people. I call it family meal.
Wow.
At restaurants, before you start your shift, we have family meal. Usually one of the cooks who's in charge, you know, everyone's prepping, and then one of the cooks breaks off and they're in charge of cooking family meal generally. And then you kind of rotate that through. Sometimes it's the executive chef, sometimes it's the dishwasher, whatever it is. And
Good on you.
then we all sit down and eat.
Yeah.
And talk about the shift, talk about life, you know, get ourselves mentally ready to come out and serve. And so anyways, I was just bouncing around in my head, and I was like, well, let's just set that table a little wider. And so, yeah, this, you know, as of now, I don't know what was the total number of people that have come in and eaten, but I just said, I don't want, it's about keeping people's dignity also, because they're also going through it. And I don't want to ever make them feel like a charity case or anything like that. And so I just said, hey, you come in, say I'm here for family meal. We sit you down, we feed you, no questions asked, no judgment. I don't need you to prove anything. And
That's beautiful.
we've been doing that for the last, you know, 4 or 5 days now.
It's beautiful.
But that's,
That's
you know,
the manifestation of love.
without a restaurant, I couldn't do that, you know, or you know, I don't know. And so we'll see how long that needs to go. And like I said, we try to create something that can be sustainable indefinitely as far as on our side.
Yeah.
But I think that if more of us thought in that way, there'd be a lot less work to do. Like, you know, if that was just something that everybody agreed to, I think that we wouldn't be in a panicked situation
Right.
when something like this happens.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And your restaurants at this point, it's Wu Chow, Swiss Attic, and
Toshokan.
okay, I can't even say that.
Yeah,
I don't want to say it. I'll butcher it. I'm sorry.
No worries.
And that, what does that mean? What does the third one mean?
Toshokan means library.
And
It means library. Yeah.
Is it in a library type setting?
It's behind a
Because I've been to your
bookshelf.
other two, but I haven't been.
It's behind a bookcase in a speakeasy.
Ooh,
yeah. So literally, when we had thought about it, I had this idea, and I've just been always fascinated by this kind of campy, open the book and the bookshelf opens type of thing. I always joked about how one day I'd have that in my home.
Yeah.
That's yet to happen. It's going to happen.
It's
But
gonna happen.
but
I had that at our prior home, actually,
really,
believe it or not. Yeah, I don't have it at this home, but our prior home, I
always
actually had
wondered that.
that. We had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, I think it's
The
great.
kids would go hide in there,
That's right.
all
That's
types of
right.
things.
And yeah, and so anyways, I had this idea about doing it, and then so when my partners and I were thinking about the name, I was like, let's put it behind a bookshelf, and we're gonna call it library. So we're going into the library, and so
That's
we
cool.
just kind
That's cool. Josh Bear has that at Capital Factory. Did you know that?
no, I didn't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You should go in there.
There's a little
So,
speakeasy in there.
16th floor. He has a bookshelf. You pull a book out, it opens. That's a meeting room. It's
Amazing.
really cool. Yeah.
Well, I should do a pop-up dinner in there.
Yeah. I'll say there's one bad thing about that. You got to have good ventilation. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that for sure. For sure.
And so how long have you been in the restaurant business, and what was really the driving force for you that inspired you when you entered it?
So I started out in the bar business, actually. I went to school at Texas A&M,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a dream when I was like maybe 5 to be a vet.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be a vet, and really was kind of almost some level of an act of rebellion against my family wanting me to be a doctor. And I think it just when I was like, I don't want to be a doctor,
Right.
but then I was like, I love animals, as I'll be an animal doctor,
Right. Right.
and I just kind of latched onto that in like 5 years old, and then you kind of like I just never let it go, and I just kind of just it was like almost like I put that in its place and went on with my life, thinking, well, it's like I'll cross that bridge when I get there, and it even led me to choose A&M as the school I wanted to go to because they had a great vet school,
Mm-hmm. That's right.
and got all the way there 2 years into biomedical science as my major and then I was like, I should go work at a vet clinic and just get some on real life experience. And I just really didn't like it at all. It's interesting, and it partially, like I said, it might have been the clinic that I worked at, or I don't know what it was. It felt way more transactional than I thought. And I think that that there's a similar situation. And you mentioned healthcare earlier, and I'd love to talk about that more.
Yeah.
It felt that there were these type of things, and it wasn't quite so, I don't think, as altruistic as I kind of wanted it to be, or as much of like this thing that we're doing some level of helping, like ease and suffering, but it was really more of felt like almost like maintenance, almost like working at a mechanic or something like that. Is kind of like shots, spays, neuters, and
Right.
doing this kind of stuff, and and they were wonderful people, but it just it didn't do. I think somewhere along the line, I might have probably would have rather liked to be like a Jack Hanna or something like that, or some sort of Steve Irwin kind of
Right.
guy that goes and just learns about animals
Yeah.
or worked at a zoo or something. I don't
Yeah.
know. So anyways, and that pivot got me into needing some other work and finding other jobs. And at the time I needed, I'd found, I was changed my major to elementary education.
Mm-hmm.
I loved working with children. Children has always been a huge part of my life. I was in PALS and peer assisted leadership, and Big Brother Big Sister program, and the Boys and Girls Club, and the summer camps, and all that stuff. And so
I don't know if I've ever seen anybody post more beautiful things than you do on your children today. I mean, it's like very clear how much you love them and love being a dad and great husband.
Been wanting it to be, I have a pretty complicated childhood, and so I think there's also this kind of need to almost prove that it's not genetic, like it's almost disprove that cycles are not necessarily forced upon you. If it's something like that you want to break a cycle, you can, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
you have to do a lot of inner work for that, like a lot of deep programming. But it's not. It can be overcome. It is actually passed through genetics, but that doesn't mean it can't be overcome.
That's right.
But
I agree.
But it definitely is. There is no doubt that it makes it harder if there's that pattern.
That's what I realized too. With I've always been somewhere, or never necessarily anything published or anything in my head, but I've always been kind of more of a nurture over nature kind of person. Just so that you can kind of convert anything into anyone. But then after having kids, I was like, sometimes they just come out a certain way. Like that's who they are. Like I talked about how like you can nurture it, but you can't turn a peach tree into an apple tree.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just,
Yeah.
That's what you got to
They're
work with.
also they're also, they incarnate, this is my words, but I really believe it, to also be teacher to you. Like, it's interesting dualism where
Yeah.
you're there to be a teacher for them, and Abraham Lincoln had this great quote where he said, "If you want your children to walk in a certain direction, you yourself must walk in that direction." But they are also a mirror and a teacher to you. And if I think about the most humbling moments of my life, it's been either with my wife, calling me out on something, or my children.
Yeah.
And those are the times where my soul has experienced some of the most growth.
Yeah, and then and they like you said, as a mirror is the absolute. I mean, when they're infants, the parroting is cute and adorable. But
Mhm.
as you get older and you see the more complicated things that they can mirror, and then if you see something that you might not particularly want them to mirror, and then you're like, where did you learn that from? And then you're
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, I learned it from me. Like
Right,
kind of like
right, right.
like whoa, it's like whoa, hold
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
Very humbling for them.
Who raised you? Oh,
Yeah, yeah, those out. Dang it. But yeah, and so then I went in and needed a nighttime job
mhm,
because was going to school during the day, and I didn't want to work at some place that needed me completely overnight, like a stock boy at Walmart or something like that. And so I was like, well, I'm a big guy. So I saw an ad for a door guy,
mhm,
or
mhm.
something on one of the clubs, and so I went in there and applied, got the job.
How tall
Uh,
are you again?
6'5",
6'5", yeah.
and then I went in and pretty quickly as a bouncer. It wasn't even a door guy yet. I was a bouncer,
Mhm.
and then pretty quickly realized I'm pacifist. I don't particularly like to break up fights. I'm not
Right,
I don't like getting into fights. It's not
right.
something that doesn't bring me any
Yeah,
joy.
you've always seemed like a peacemaker to me.
Yeah, and so it's like and besides some level of training and dealing with elementary school kids, breaking up fights is still, talking them down is still tough.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, there's skill there
Actually,
to it.
it's kinda like the ideal bouncer actually is someone who is a peacemaker,
Yeah, a little bit
you
more
know?
of that. Yeah,
You
more.
don't want the bouncer that's
Uh,
just like likes getting in
yeah,
fights.
just to get in there and let me just choke this guy out.
Right.
Yeah, and then I just watched looking at these bartenders, and I'm like, here I am getting into fights for $10 an hour, and these bartenders are making $300 a night, like flirting with girls. I'm like, well, I can pour a
What's wrong
drink.
with this bitch?
Yeah,
Right.
and so, but what kind of struck a chord with me really was the interactions that you ended up getting at what would effectively be in any sort of these kind of watering holes, right?
Mhm.
Um, I realized quickly, like, this is like the oasis in the desert, right? This is this place where all of a sudden the hippo and the lion and the zebra and the wildebeest and the alligator and they're all drinking water together, and for a moment they're not killing each other, and they're trying to, they just kind of are there. And there's this interesting thing where it's like I went there for bartending ultimately to running that bar,
Right.
and I just realized it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't know how many other people in the city has the chief of police's phone number in their phone, as well as the local gang guy, the local thug that whatever that comes in and does whatever it does. Like I was like, I really kind of tread that line, and it was interesting um, how you can navigate in kind of in this kind of middle mixture of people, and
Mhm.
really get to see kind of how similar they are and what they're dealing with, and again, in a brief moment, everyone's very similar. You're
Mhm.
trying to This person's celebrating their birthday.
Yep.
For a moment, you don't care what they're doing. All I care about is that they're having a good time,
Yep.
like then, or enjoying themselves. And so,
You know how genetically identical we are across the world? 99.9%
oh,
is
oh yeah.
DNA
I
wise.
thought you
Yeah.
meant like literally you and I. It's like, I don't
Yeah.
know. We've never,
No, no, no,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
but you
But literally humans. Yeah,
got
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
99.9% the
Oh yeah.
same DNA. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the it's so cliche that, I think everyone has heard it, but it's like, yeah, I mean, if you really, we're so much more alike than we are different,
Exactly.
in every sense of the word. Even in a very divisive, even if people who are out here that have belief structures and systems that are completely what you would think are just completely antithesis to what you do, their motivations behind them believing that are very similar. They believe
Yep.
that this belief structure is what's going to benefit my family the most, or it's going to benefit me the most, or whatever it is. And that's very similar to everybody else. It's just whether or not what we're willing to do to get it, what we think has worked better for us, and so on and so forth. That's my belief, at least.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so then I got into that. Loved it. Loved the networking. Again, it's not the late hours, working till 5 a.m. is not necessarily, ideal. And then it was time to kind of get into move and get into another industry, and I got into the restaurant industry. I've always loved to cook. I've always loved to be in there. And again, I still don't drink. I don't drink. So
Oh, that's interesting. So you don't drink alcohol?
no, I don't drink alcohol.
Have you? When did you stop?
Never started.
Wow.
Have you heard of Asian flush? They call it Asian flush.
Oh, I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it
You
bad.
turn red.
Yeah, red. It's a hystemic response. It feels like an allergic reaction.
Yeah.
So you're talking.
Interesting. Why do you think that happens? Like for Asians?
I mean, it's a legit genetic. We were missing an enzyme that breaks down alcohol.
But it must be for that lineage that they didn't drink in the past.
Well, and I
right?
think the access to that. I mean, I think if you look at historically, I mean, this is me just kind of talking off the cuff. I haven't done a full history, but East Asian, particularly based spirits, were a lot of rice grain based. And then we go over here and you have like wheat grain based, what I mean, and stuff like that. And so, and then the way that it's made and brewed and culturally and how that works and everything like that, I just think that it's just your body's developed to not need it as much or not use it as much. And again, I don't think it's particularly, I mean, everyone is in various levels. But I had friends of mine in college that would take like Pepsid, that would take like antihistamines and stuff like that, just to fight back that symptom, and then just drink their way through it, and it's fine. So it's not as obviously, I mean, it's just really more of a personal.
So actually, I stopped drinking in November.
This past November.
This past November, and it was actually a psychedelic journey I did, where there was a part of it where I was literally like seeing my body from above. And it was just a 10-second part of it. And it was basically take care of the vessel. You're just poisoning yourself. You don't need this socially anymore. And that was it.
Yeah.
It was like, and it literally just killed the taste. And I'll still have it like for like a ceremonial thing, like Passover, just to drink for, but it really, I feel a lot better. I gotta tell you, I feel a lot better.
I appreciate the artisanship of alcohol.
I do.
A really nice glass of wine.
Sure.
Sip it on a scotch. I appreciate.
There's lots of tradition around it.
Exactly. I appreciate the ceremony behind it. I understand. I mean, celebratory. I mean, something of any level of scarcity, and then we share it with somebody. I think that there's something to be said about that.
For sure.
Like, an incredible top of the season. Watermelon that you got, like in Japan is known for these kind of psychotically expensive, really nice fruits, but they're at
Japan,
the absolute best,
the fruit
perfect melon.
perfectly,
But it's like, and so you have that and you've been saving it in your fridge for a special occasion, and you have a window of a couple days, and you invite somebody over and crack it open.
I think that's
just
great.
a ceremony there, right?
I mean, Tara and I were talking about this because he doesn't drink either, and he's the founder of Four Sigmatic, mushroom brand. He's amazing. I think that was episode 13, if I'm not mistaken. And he said, hey, like I would though, if I was like in some small village in France and I was over at a French woman's home and she made the panna cotta, which I know sugar's not good for me. And she served like whatever. And I was like, of course, like, I mean, these communal moments are so important. They're so important.
I think it's, I talked to my son about it, about stuff like sugar and everything. And I'm just like, the problem is that our technology has allowed us to harvest these things at such level of abundance. It solves itself when it was more of a primitive type of scenario, right?
Right.
I remember my dog,
Yes.
my first restaurant that I opened, we had a dish, a beef dish, a beef rib, call it a dragon rib. It was this big giant beef rib, like the whole entire beef rib that was braised soft. It was amazing. And I remember, I would bring the bone home. I would save one every once in a while, if we'd have an extra bone, and I'd wrap it up and save it and give it to my dog when I come home. And
That must have been a big dog.
Huh?
That must have been a big dog.
Yes. Well, it was a chocolate lab, big-ish. She got bigger because
That's
of this.
right.
Yeah,
Giving
but
it the dragon bone.
yeah, but then the vet was like, your dog's gaining a little weight, cholesterol's a little bit high.
Yeah.
He's like, do you feed her table scraps? I was like, no, I really don't. I stick pretty strict to no table scraps. Like I do give her bones from the restaurant. She goes, what kind of bones? I was like, beef bones. She's like, how often? I'm like, I don't know, once a week,
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's like, oh my God. She's like, maybe once a year.
Right.
She goes, think about how often a dog takes down a cow.
Right.
Like in real life, like how often would
Right.
that happen?
Right.
Like
Right.
when the dog would stumble upon,
Right.
and these are dogs that are roaming and running around, and they would have to take down this animal. Like she was
Right.
like, this is not a,
That cow's gonna kick some ass.
yeah, this is not a
Yeah.
normal
Yeah.
thing. You cannot, this dog should not have a cow rib bone, like
Right.
4 times a month. It's like, this is
Right.
not the marrow and all that richness. And it's like, dang, I didn't even think about that. But it's like, and it's the same thing. It's like, I remember watching, when you go over down into like Taiwan, and have you ever had like sugar, obviously you're still well traveled, like sugar cane juice?
I have. Yeah.
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 Where
I haven't. I've never been to Taiwan, but I've had that before.
yeah, they're all over, but
Yeah.
those vendors that have that giant press, and then you just run this
Yeah.
stalk of sugar cane, and it pours out
Yeah.
this glass, and then run it 10 times, and you get a glass of juice.
Right.
And you take that whole juice and you boil it down, and you'll probably end up with a tablespoon of sugar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you're thinking about, if you drink a big gulp of Coke, that's like me out in the woods gnawing 16 canes,
Right.
stalks of sugar cane. Like if I was just sitting there and just gnawing on 100 pounds of sugar cane
Right.
in order for me to just get this pure,
Yeah. That's actually that's a great way to think about it.
it's impossible.
Yeah.
There's no way you could not eat enough sugar
Yeah.
to give yourself this problem
Yeah.
if the technology had not figured out a way to get it into this little packet for you.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, overall, I think that I alcohol, I understand the both physical and psychological effects of it. I think that some people like having it as a scapegoat. Allows you to, I had this conversation earlier today actually about this notion of, a sober man's thoughts are a drunk man's words,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this gives you an opportunity to just kind of be a little bit more free.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that some people, whether they intentionally or not intentionally, there's a freeing ability to be able to be a little bit more loose with necessarily who they are. And I can understand that. So,
And there's been some utility in that. I mean, our founding fathers in America toasted with Madeira over the Declaration of Independence, and a lot of them lost their lives in the Revolutionary War. So, like, that was part of the kind of like, okay, we're going to take on the empire.
yeah.
So there's definitely utility. I think the problem is the chronic use of anything. And I was never an alcoholic. I wasn't looking to stop using alcohol. I just can tell you that's what my soul told me to do, and I listened to it, and it was, but I honestly, it wasn't even just as much. I mean, I did listen to it. It literally just killed the taste for me. I mean, I did not crave it.
We see that, but we're seeing that at the restaurant level across the board. Alcohol use
Why do you think
has
that's
plummeted.
happening?
I think this next generation has a little bit more of holistic awareness. The rise of psychedelics. I think that people are starting to find different vice in that way.
Right.
And you know what? This is a theory, and I don't know if anybody can prove it. But my theory also is this next generation coming up is the most documented generation on the planet. When I would make a mistake in college, like we always joke about, thank God we didn't have smartphones back when I was in college. Can you imagine this stuff? The internet is forever.
I'm just laughing because I've had this conversation so many times.
Really?
With people.
Oh yeah. Our age, yeah. So I
so
think that there's an awareness now that if I get messy, I will become a meme. I will go out there and that video will be circulated forever. Somebody is going to capture it, and stuff. And I think whether or not it's that intentional, meaning, oh, I don't want it to be recorded, or like I'm just more aware that everything is recorded at all times,
Yeah.
that maybe you're just trying not to be so sloppy.
Yeah.
This notion is
I
just
don't
not there.
know if it's that. I mean,
I don't
I
either, but I just thought
yeah, I
about
mean,
that.
the reason I don't know if it's that is, do you remember for a while, it actually was popping up a lot in the Asian community where people were literally going into private planes that they would just pay, $100
Yeah.
or whatever to take
Take pictures.
photos and say like, "Look at me, I'm on a private plane," type
Yeah.
of thing.
Temples.
I I think that that's starting to die off too. Like this kind of, this next generation, I'm very hopeful about this next generation. Like social media use is plummeting with
Yeah.
it too,
Internally. Yeah.
which is really interesting. It seems like every generation gets better, and every generation gets, you know, typecast by the prior generation as, oh, they're born into this. They're never going to know a world without AI or social media or whatever it is. But the resiliency of humans is pretty strong, and I think that this next generation is starting to figure out like, hey, this whole thing is a massive manipulation machine. Like they're hijacking my body, they're hijacking my mind, and they're kind of like revolting in a way, in a beautiful way, not
No, and I've seen that.
violent.
I've seen it. My son's 13, and
Yeah.
he recognizes what he would, what we call brain rot, and we looks and he
Yeah.
recognizes stuff. I mean, he partakes for sure, but he certainly, I mean, there's some of his friends that self-impose screen time limitations on themselves as opposed to as a punishment.
Yeah.
Understanding this kind of, I mean, he has,
Which is amazing. Think about that.
it's amazing.
Like for him to be that wise at that age,
Yeah. And
that's awesome.
yeah, and I think it's again, it is having that, there's the novelty that's kind of worn off on it that allows him to look at it for face value as opposed to,
Mhm.
like it's interesting to me that I thought about the other day, my whole childhood, like Dick Tracy video conferencing watch, where they can do that.
Yeah,
And
I
then I'm
remember.
like, I don't use FaceTime very much at all.
Yeah.
And I just thought about how, like, it's wild to me that my whole life, I thought how cool it would be that if I could see my friend as I was talking to them.
Yeah.
But now it's like, I'm like more analog.
All right.
Like I have friends of mine that will want to get together and like, oh yeah, it's like, well, if you're busy, we can just FaceTime or Zoom. I'm like, no, let's get together for a coffee.
Yeah.
Like, just like we said, like, I want to be in
Yeah.
your orbit because this is
Right.
how,
Well, that's why I don't do this over Zoom.
yeah.
Like this is like way better. The fidelity of this, and feeling each other's energy is like
Yeah.
so much better.
It's so much better. And I think that that's a similar thing where they're seeing this and the convenience of it is not as beneficial. It's
Mhm.
like I see it. My mother in her early times when she would text me and each text would be like an email.
Mhm.
It'd start off with "Hey son" and then end with "Love mom" and every text, and I'd be like, "Mom, I know it's you. It's coming through your cell phone, whatever." And now we use it
Right, like
use it
phone.
conversationally,
Yeah.
but then it's interesting because as I've gotten older, now I'm like, well, it's like if we're texting back and forth more than a couple times, like,
Yeah.
just pick up the phone so I can hear her voice,
Right.
so I can just talk to her, like, let's just
Exactly.
talk, right?
Right. Right.
And so, I agree with you. I think that I think that the next generation will have a much better grasp of reality and them being able to spot, like,
Yeah.
like I know that while my parents would probably fall for certain AI things that I wouldn't fall for,
Mhm.
but I would probably fall for things that my son and my children will never fall for. You know what I mean? Or
Right.
will never be fooled by,
Right.
because this is going to be so, such just a utility to them.
Yeah.
They'll understand and how to manage it, as opposed to, I feel that, going back to the alcohol thing, I think that cultures that don't demonize it as much,
Mhm.
that is part of their culture a little bit more, I think has been shown, and that it's not as much of a problem.
Mhm.
If it's one of those things that you as a family and your family teaches you that, your family drinks wine at dinner and you were allowed to have a glass, or if you wanted to or not, and whatever it is. And then you don't feel like when you go off to college and you're away for the first time that you need to break into a liquor cabinet and drink as
Right.
much as you possibly can. It's like, it's been around. We've never locked the liquor cabinet at home, and I had my options and I never wanted it,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
being able to have access to it in that way, I think will allow you to self-regulate a lot better.
Yeah, that was a gift that my parents gave me is they didn't make it taboo,
Yeah.
and I didn't want it at all, and I don't think I started drinking at all until I was about 22. So I've skipped the whole high school thing. And then, just a drink here and there, but never an alcoholic, never chronic use. And it was just interesting that for whatever reason, it told me, nope, you're just poisoning yourself. It's just
Yeah.
time to graduate.
No, I appreciate that. I can appreciate that. And, and it's interesting because like, while fundamentally that is detrimental to my business because, selling alcohol and stuff is it's part of the
I
restaurant
will tell you,
business.
these mocktails are costing a lot of money, though.
That,
I am buying mocktails.
but that allows you to have the ceremony without the
does.
effect.
It does.
And that was the
I never have a
premise.
mocktail hangover.
Well, that's the premise of it all. The premise is, at the time, it used to be, you asked for a mocktail, the bartender would just pour together 17 different juices and give you this smoothie, and it's just all sugar and juice.
Right.
But it's just like, if you can be conscientious about it and spend the same level of effort of composing some sort of drink, but just without alcohol, what difference does it make?
Right.
There's a level of artisanship to it. There's a level of thoughtfulness to it that is like, no, it's like, your sandwich doesn't have alcohol in it, but somebody took time to put together this balance of flavors in the bread and
you don't know about the type of sandwich.
That's true. You know what? Let me not judge. But yeah, rum butter. But yeah, but it's just like, it's like, it doesn't have to be. And that was kind of the conversation I've had with people in the past when I said I don't drink. It's just like, I don't want to say it. I don't want to make you feel bad for doing it. I enjoy it. I literally sell it, and it's not a big deal. But it's just a matter of saying, like, I just don't have to have it. Like, if you're sitting there saying, hey, come over for a barbecue, and then if you're like, you gonna have any beer? And then I was like, no, and then you don't want to come anymore. Well, then that's a you thing. That's not a me thing. Like, we're just trying to get together, and I'm providing food and refreshments, but
yeah, I will tell you though that on this Grand Canyon trip, which was amazing, Grand Canyon Expedition Company, unbelievable, and very affordable trip actually. The non-alcoholic beer, which I'd never had before, it's kind of crazy how good it's gotten. It tastes exactly like the alcoholic beer, and I wasn't drinking a lot of it, but there are good options now.
Yeah, I think if you can look at it from its face value, the part where I start to see a problem is when the effect is more important than both the taste and the detriment, right? That you're just like, when you're drinking grain alcohol, or something like that, and you're like, I need this effect, get it into my body as quickly as possible, that kind of thing. As opposed to doing what you're going after.
Right.
It's drier. This is sweeter. This is spicy. This is hotter. You want the warmth of the alcohol. You want the oak. You want the whatever it is. Anything that your intention and that your target is
with this meal.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, it's the same way with food. As like stunt food, right? It's like the hot sauces that are out there just to cause you pain. They don't really taste like anything. It's just, there to create this physical response. It's like, well, that doesn't interest me at all. But if you can create something that utilizes some of this nature's craziest, spiciest things that you've, done, and you can actually make it taste like something, well,
that's interesting.
And that's interesting. I'll try it. It's interesting to me, as opposed to like, no, we've harvested and concentrated the capsaicin in this to just literally cause as much humanly pain as I possibly can as a stunt. Well, what good is that to anybody? But cool.
And in terms of restaurants, what do you love about it the most? Because you clearly have a love for it.
Like I said, I think I love, I broke it down a while ago to a friend of mine. If you look at like basic human needs, right? I mean, eating is obviously one of them. And I was thinking about how, like, if you really kind of think of it in a very philosophical level, like if you and I were on a deserted island together and I found some food and I chose to share that food with you, it would be like, I want you to live. Like, this would be like, purely selfish, I should keep it all for myself. That'll sustain my life longer.
Right.
You get your own. But anytime somebody opens up their table, breaks bread with you, shares food with you, serves you food in a very some level, I feel like it's them saying, I want you to live longer.
Right.
I want you to be here longer. I want to provide some basic human need for you. It's like you offering shelter. Hey, do you have a place to stay?
Yeah.
We're both here. It's raining. Come into my home.
Yeah.
And that is fundamentally something that I really like gravitate towards. I really do. I feel like when somebody comes into my home and I offer them something to drink or I offer them something to eat, it's like it's not like me just giving them something. It's just not like me sitting there going, here, take this coaster. Here's a toy that my son doesn't want anymore. It's like I'm not just giving you something.
Right.
It's like just saying that, hey, humans need this. We've agreed that this means it brings you joy. This food gives me joy, or I took effort in making it. And again, this is something that I feed my own family. And if I give it to you, you're like my family. Like at that point, it's something that I feel like is that way. And I've always treated restaurants in that way. I've always treated that restaurant in a way to say that this is a way to not only share in sustenance and share in literal survival of our living selves, but our culture too. I think that a lot of people experience new cultures for the first time through their food. And music is there too. I think that there's probably the vast majority of people that have eaten Chinese food have never been anywhere close to China, but can speak very intelligently about potentially even regions of China and the food that it's from and stuff like that because
Right.
they experience their food that way.
Yeah.
And that's the part to me that I feel like is just very it's I feel like it's like the closest thing to like of just of welcoming someone into your life and your culture as it gets.
Mhm.
And the production side of it, the restaurant food side of it, is the closest thing to alchemy that I think that we have been able to do. Like to be able to recently, my family was under the weather a little bit last week. I was under the weather, had flu about 10 days ago.
Mm.
And as my children were, just going through it, I made congee. I made rice porridge for my family. And then it was interesting because like I didn't think I'd get so into my feels about it. My grandmother's 97 years old, and she used to make this for me when I was sick. And so for me, making this for my children when they're sick, it just really kind of caught me as I was making it.
Yeah.
And and my wife was, really enjoying it. Never really had it before. And I was just thinking about that we made this giant pot of congee and it was like 1 cup of rice. It was like 1 cup of rice and you just cook it and break it down and it turns into this bowl of
Really?
porridge,
No, that
and it
tends
and
to be just that small, and then
yeah,
like
it
that.
just expands out. And
Yeah.
then, when we put put a little peanuts in there, put a little chili oil, a little green onion, and it's
Mhm.
a little ginger. It's like
It's basic but delicious.
but delicious and it's comforting in any language.
Yeah.
This is not what this is markedly different than caldo, than a chicken noodle soup,
Mhm.
than any level of comfort food at any level of any different culture. But you give it to anybody of any culture and they can taste the comfort in there because of
Mhm.
the time it takes and the warmth or whatever it is. There's
Right.
these things that are just very ubiquitous that are just like, this is just the way it is. And I think that that's what it is for me for restaurants. I really
Mhm.
feel like there's something there that connects us in that way, and I just really love it. And I use this speech in my orientation, and I say this in our pre-shift. And if you worked for me, you probably heard it 100 times. But when we opened up Swift's in 2013, 2012, um, there was a couple years in, we had a family that came in for freshman orientation.
Mhm.
And they came in, and we just opened the restaurant, and so we were the new hotspot. And
Yeah.
they came in. The parents were like, "We heard all about you. And, we wanted to come here and ate, and then blinked an eye, and then they came in. They would come in through over the course of a few years, and then they came in one time, and I saw them all dressed up, and they're like, "Yeah, it's graduation. My son graduated, and he wanted to come here for dinner." And I was just like, "Wow, man!" And then I was just like, out of the hundreds of restaurants in the city,
Mhm.
anywhere you could have chose anywhere,
Yeah.
and you're like, "I want to go there
Mhm.
because this is where I went for my freshman year. I love what they do there."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Tell me that's just a meal. Tell me that that's just a transaction. That's just, here's your sandwich, give me your money and get out of here." Like, it's
Yeah.
not. We're there, every bit of a part of that person's whole family celebration.
Yeah.
And it's like, and there's an honor to it. There's a responsibility to it. There's a weight to it that we should be proud to be a part of
Yeah.
that ecosystem.
Yeah.
And
It's
so,
beautiful. I was once talking with Tom at Fun de San Miguel,
oh yeah.
and he eats there all the time. I mean, it's like his cafeteria too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And this is by far and away, like, I think, the best interior Mexican food in Austin. And he he really loves the place, and he really manifests love there. And he said to me, he said, I've known him for a while. He said, that table right there, and he pointed 2 tables over. He said, that's where George Bush proposed to Laura. It's like, it was that table. And it was just such a cool moment, like, he remembers, like,
Oh,
all of those moments,
remember all of those things. We remember, you remember the times where, people have come up to you and said, "Thank you for helping us." This was, when my mother turned, 100, and we were, we had to find a way to go around and get her up the stairs and all this sort of stuff, and we all made it happen, and to go
Yeah.
above and beyond and stuff. And we remember all these things. We've had a couple weddings there. I've done, a dozen proposals of different versions and how to try to get creative, and
Mhm.
thank you for, how can we do it, and even the number of, like, people who are visiting, I know a number of musicians and stuff,
Mhm.
and I bring them food backstage, and I bring them because I know that when they're traveling and they don't get a chance to have these nice comforting meals
Mhm.
a lot of times,
Yeah.
and for me to be able to provide that for even people who are at, like, the top of their, accessibility to access to everything game, and for me to be able to say, "Hey, look, here's a chance for me to provide you some comfort, or something that'll do something for you while you go and pull yourself out into this audience for thousands of people to sing to."
Yeah.
I think that's just a huge honor for it, and,
Yeah.
so I really enjoy that part. That's the
Well,
part I love the most.
that's, it says a lot about you that you think about it that way. Um, and maybe that is common in the restaurant world. I don't know. But
I think the ones that
cool thing.
do it the best, you can tell. I think you can tell.
You can tell.
I think that this is why, as conglomerates come through, and as, your restaurant starts to grow, and it become, you have a C-suite, and, and all of a sudden the decisions are being made way upstream from the actual people that are interacting with the guests or whatever. Then you start to see that the soul starts to die away a little bit, because you're not really interacting and finding that problem out.
Right.
It's we're not problem. It's not the right word. It's like we're not reaching their needs as what they need. It's like us. I mean, I remember we were one of the first restaurants early on, 13 years ago, that gluten-free on the menu, vegetarian, vegan on the menu, like annotated and intentionally made dishes that were those things, because we were there and we were seeing this trend. And I had friends that would carry around gluten-free soy sauce with them because they knew the restaurant wouldn't carry it, so they wanted to start doing that. and
Right.
and I started seeing that, and so it was just one of those things where we're like, hey, we should just intentionally, let's start apologizing to these people. That it's like, oh, you want a vegetarian dish, well, here, take this, and I guess you could just eat the lettuce off of it. And it's like became this kind of side thought, and
It's the
instead
one
it's like,
downside of being a vegetarian sometimes. when restaurants don't know how to do it, it's like,
Yeah, it's just like, don't forget it. I just don't
yeah,
need, I won't need anything.
right,
And that's what it was. And I was like, I didn't want that. And it
right.
was like, let's do something intentional.
Mhm,
Let's just cook good vegetables. Let's stop thinking of it in terms of meat substitutes. Like, let's
mhm,
just cook good vegetables. Like,
mhm.
vegetables are delicious.
Delicious.
And do it beyond uh just like salad,
Mhm,
you know, like this grazing type of finesse, and like just like the mocktails, like
mhm.
you can take intentionality
Oh,
and
yeah.
say, I want to balance the flavors, I want to balance the textures, I want to be
Mhm.
inspired by how these things interact with each other, just not with any meat. Like, why
Right,
not? Why not? You know?
right.
And so,
Yeah.
and so I think that those decisions are a lot harder to make 110,000 miles away from these restaurants. And
Right.
so when you're making decisions on that level and the bottom line starts to become the most important conversation, then you start cutting corners because that's how you
Mhm.
maximize profit the quickest, you
Yeah.
know? And for us, it's the opposite. Like I said, you know, it's an honor for me to be a part of a team that that can meet me where I was mentally at the middle of the night, you know, and say, I want to feed people.
Right.
How do we do it?
Yeah.
And then to have a partner, you know, that we're looking at the numbers and going, you know, we were coming out of a slow summer. Summer's slow. And it's like, it's not like we're, you know, money's coming out of our ears. And for us to go, I think if we do this and this and this, and I think we can, and then I'm like, hey, what about this? And yada, yada. And then for me to talk to them about like, okay, well, it's really important to me that it remains dignified and it's not, we're not like serving them like Oliver Twist style out of a bowl of
Right.
porridge and a bowl. And here, I mean, I don't think people, this is not where we're at. We're not in a situation where people are in a position where they're, it's that level of dire yet, not, at least not for most. And so I think it's like being able to provide a meal and the psychological side of it of enjoying breaking bread with your family and
Mhm.
feel like you're just going out and having a meal
All right.
is also healing. It's also cathartic to do that. It's not
Yeah.
just here's some sustenance, here's a, you know, a bowl of plain oatmeal,
Right.
you know, with some spam, you know, for 17 cents and just there so you don't starve. It's like that's not what we're trying to do here. We're also reminding people that there's hope in the world, that we're reminding people that the community is here to take care of them, that we're here. But first and foremost, I'm here to take care of you and feed you.
Mhm.
Money is secondary,
Yeah.
you know? And like I said, at this point in my life, or in our career, 13 years in at Swift's, 10 years at Woo, you know, Toshokan now going entering into year 4.
Mhm.
Like, I don't ever want to talk about our food again. Like,
Mhm.
I don't want to, like, I don't want to, you guys know, like, people know we're a restaurant. Look us up. Go on a website. Go on and you know, read some reviews.
Mhm.
Like, here, this is who we are. Our happy hour is posted.
Mhm.
You know, like that's not who I want to. I want to market about who we are in the community and where we are, and this is
Right.
where you go, and this is a place that you go if you want this type of experience, and this is a place, and then for you to know
Mhm.
that that, you know, hey, it's time. I have a friend in town. We don't want to go eat this huge big meal. I don't even really know what I want to eat. Let's just go to Swift's and we'll get a couple snacks and,
Mhm.
you know, and it can be $20 and you can go and leave
Mhm.
without this pomp and circumstance that's required for you to think about like to call a friend and plan a dinner and, and we'll
Right.
wait for a birthday to do it.
Yep.
It's like, no, let's just break bread. Let's just get together and get together because it's been a minute since we've seen each other. Like, let's just do it.
Yeah.
And we can connect again. And that's been my mission for this year
Right.
and going into next year is just to remind people of that, you
Yeah.
know, that like I joke about with friend before. I was like, I'd call him and like, hey, you know, like during like crawfish season or whatever, it's like, let's go get some crawfish.
Yeah.
And then he'd be like, oh, I just had lunch. I'm like, it's not what I asked you.
Right.
I didn't ask you to go eat. You don't have to eat anything. Just come by.
Right. Right.
Just hang out,
Yeah.
you know, grab an iced tea
Yeah.
and we can sit there and talk, you know, but there's this notion of like again, once it starts to shift into this utility, this kind of like,
Right.
I'm just eating for sustenance, I'm food for fuel and not, again, the ceremony of
Yeah.
me calling you and saying, hey man, it's been a minute since we sat down and had this conversation if we weren't recording it. And then I'm like, let's just meet for a coffee. It's like, do we need coffee? No, doesn't necessarily matter. But
Mhm.
it's a medium for us to
Right.
do something,
Yeah.
because otherwise you would sit there and go, hey, it's like it's just something our society has done around. It's like, let's have tea, let's have coffee, instead of saying they go, let's grab a couch together.
Mhm.
Feels and sounds kind of weird. So we sit there and say sit there and say that, hey,
Right.
let's go grab a coffee,
Right. Right. Right.
and that's and I think it's like, the meme of the Netflix and chill or whatever it is. It's like this mentality. It's like everyone kind of knows the coded language
Right.
that says that this is a date and it's for us a chance to cuddle up together and watch a movie together. But
Yep.
you want to create something like that. So it's like, yeah, I want to catch up. I haven't caught up for a while. Let's go grab a coffee.
Yeah.
I'll grab a beer or whatever it is.
One of the things that's making me think of is, so the biggest company I've started with amazing people, amazing co-founder was Bazaar Boys, and
Hmm.
we grew to 850 people. And I always made this point of never, ever, ever forget about what got us here and the customer and the humanity, right? And that's the thing, is that when business gets to be a big kind of machine, or you look at it as machine, um, and it's all about inputs and outputs and all this, and you need to make a profit. Like, if you can't make a profit, then it's can't sustain itself. But when you start to look at it that way, it starts to very quickly dehumanize it.
Very
And
quickly.
one of the things I wrote at Bazaar Voice is that we really need to be careful about language, and language matters. For example, I started to hear some language where engineers were called code monkeys. I started to hear some language, this is a very common one, where women are called girls. Okay. But in business, like, you don't hear, like, me referring to a male as a boy.
Right.
And so there are lots of other examples, head count, bodies, butts and seats, and really the embodiment of what makes us so special is the way we treat each other as human beings, the way we manifest love in each other. And that if you lead that way, whether it's a restaurant or whether it's a tech company or whatever it is, you're not going to go wrong that way.
Yeah.
Seeing the humanity in each other.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's why we similar thing. We say guests instead of customers.
Mhm.
you know and I try to say we're in the hospitality industry rather than a service industry,
Mhm.
because you know at this stage there's services that are provided by robots now.
Mhm.
I've been to restaurants where the robot comes by and delivers your food.
Mhm.
It's a different experience,
Oh, yeah.
so yeah, absolutely. And again, that is every I mean, jokingly said about how the world, we'd be a better place if, instead of like a military draft, like everyone's required to have a human faced interaction job
Right.
for 6 months out of their life.
Yeah.
That they're just
Oh my
required
gosh, I love that.
go to work
Yeah.
where your entire job was contingent upon interacting with another human
Mhm.
and solving a problem or doing something like that.
Mhm.
A customer service rep, a restaurant, a waiter, a bartender, the lost baggage claim person, the
Mhm.
lady at a counter, a retail shop, or something
Yeah.
like that. Because then you can really relate about what happens when you're in that
Yeah.
situation. That you can tell it's like people who have never had to do that before. The empathy is not there for when something's going on. Like I've always, like, one of the harshest judgments that I pass on to somebody. I'm not one to prejudge most people, but is the way that people are rude to the person who had the lost baggage claim.
Mhm.
You know, because I'm always like, this person
Mhm.
is the furthest from the problem.
Mhm.
They're at the destination.
All right.
That your bags are lost back home.
Yeah. Yeah.
This person's the only person on earth that really cares
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that your bag is lost.
Yeah.
He's the only one trying, or she's the only one that's trying to help you.
Right. Right.
Why are you mean to them?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, you have no control over your own emotions about this situation. You're frustrated about the situation and the
Mhm.
circumstance, but you're taking it all out on this one poor person that's trying to help you, the only one that's trying to help.
Right.
And it's like that. It's like if you've been in that place, you are
Mhm.
all of a sudden way more empathetic to that scenario. Yeah, I worked in a pharmacy in college, just as a pharmacy tech, just as a part-time job. And I remember like it was very draining for me because I'm empathetic in that way. And I start my day off, had my coffee, had my breakfast or whatever, and I was able to walk. It was just a grocery store that was down the way from my dorm. And I'd walk to work and, I'm damn near skipping down the street, having a great day. And then one after another, everyone that showed up at that window was having a bad day. They're sick. Everyone there was sick.
All right.
Short of people picking up birth control or condoms, everyone there was not really wanting to be there. There's no that many happy drugs that were there at the time.
Yeah,
Like
they just want to get in.
they want to get in and out
well.
and feeling bad.
Yeah.
And so you sitting there and having to mitigate however this person's energy is coming at you. It was a very humbling experience. And I realized that to myself because I'd come home and I would just be like beat up. And like, it wasn't a hard job. I went out there like mining coal, or I was in there like, building a home, doing some really hard labor. Like, but I felt exhausted. I was like, yeah, because person after person after person was dealing with something, and that energy was coming my way. And it's like, to me, in a similar way in restaurants or any sort of service thing, I think like people would, that empathy, if we can encourage people or insist that people feel that, I think we'd all be better off. It'd be a lot easier for you to sit here and say, like, what we're dealing with right now, the amount of people that have such little sympathy for somebody who might need food benefits, and the amount of people that are so quick to say, well, how could you possibly be starving, and how could you possibly need food, and why do you have you have a nice, I saw a post just earlier of somebody that showed the pictures of the people waiting in line at the food bank, trying to get food, and then somebody was like, yeah man, that there's some cars in that picture that are nicer than my car. Why don't they sell their car, and then they can buy some food. And I'm just like, to have that mindset,
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
is crazy to me.
Yeah.
I'm like, they might have just lost their job and they're trying to prepare for their kids because they're like, yo, this is, and they might have to sell their car. You don't know. It might be a friend of theirs dropping them off at the food bank.
All right. Right.
But the fact that your brain doesn't look at that and think we are a civilized, the most powerful country, and we have people waiting in line
Right.
to try to get food.
Yeah.
Like that, you don't see the problem in that. And then you see the problem in these individuals, and you don't immediately sit there and say, well, is there a more efficient way? Is there a better way that we can get these people food? Or how can I help in that situation? Right. Whatever. It's like, and again, politics aside, if your brain does not immediately lean towards, man, what would I do if I was in that situation?
Right.
I think you need some work.
You've lost some humanity.
You've lost some humanity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this AI moment.
Great.
So what do you think about it?
About AI?
Yeah. Just this whole moment. I mean, because
man, I think,
you know why I started this podcast, right? I mean, maybe I should tell you that.
Please.
Yeah. So it's really, I think these big questions, that Aristotle and Plato and Confucius and all of these people have asked, the great philosophers, the great spiritual masters, etc., of what makes us most human. Like, why are we here?
Right.
Like, is there anything special about us at all? Where's this all going? I think these are really top of mind because, we've been conditioned for a long time that we would invent sentient machines. You've seen the Terminator. You've seen
Yeah.
I mean, in Judaism, in Prague, there's a story of Golem where the rabbi animates it. It becomes sentient, destroys the synagogue. Everything's over. So these are really old tales. There's tales kind of as old as time, in terms of human time, at least. And so, it's really gotten me on this soul quest to really understand, like, what is the nature of this reality?
Right.
Because this is the moment, like you and I are in the lifetime where this really is coming into sharp focus. Like, what do we want society to be like?
Right.
And what I'm hoping to be a part of with this podcast and with what I'm doing for the next 10 to 15 years of my life, maybe longer, is help humanity get to this age of abundance for all. And by all, I mean
Oh,
everywhere, Chad, everywhere, the poorest places in China or America or any, we seeing the divinity within us all, seeing that we're
yeah.
99.9% the same, like, deprogramming. And so I think it really matters. I mean, the conversation I had with Anil on episode 11, he's like, there's already 9 organizations set up to give AI the same rights as human beings.
Hmm.
That's today. I mean, we haven't even started with embodying AI with robots where they talk just like us, and eventually they'll have skin
Yeah.
that looks just like ours, and teenage boys will have to, conquer their, if we were talking about, I was talking about porn on the intro. There's going to be sex robots that look completely lifelike. That's kind of inevitable that that's going to happen.
Yep.
And societally, we're going to have to figure out how to deal with all this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, so I think that we're going to have a hard time. Um, I don't know how many generations it'll take, but each generation will have its leap. But it's kind of like how if you do any sort of research on dog behavior, about how we personify dogs so much, and we talk about how like when a dog is looking at you and panting and you think that it's cute, or if they're nuzzling you and you think that it's a term of affection, but in reality it might be a frightening situation, right? Or like a dog that like um that's licking their lips or licking their nose and stuff like that a lot, and they're like, oh, it looks like he's having a good time, but in reality, that's a stress response and stuff like that. If you really look at people who have animal behavior, and so we have the tendency to personify these things, I think, as humans.
Right.
Like I said, it's like when you mentioned it and you mentioned the Golem, Terminator, all this stuff. It's like, what does it say about us that our biggest fear if we do something that creates something human and lifelike is that it's going to kill us all? It's like, because it's like we're like, yeah, that's the biggest fear, because that is the worst part of us that we think about. Like I'm not like, nobody's thinking about like, oh yeah, it's so cool, I can't wait for somebody to invent AI and this person is going to immediately going to be the best, or this thing is going to be the best surgeon of all time, is the person going to create incredible music. Matter of fact, we're very defensive about that nature. It's like I've been messing around with these, basically parlor tricks, right, of like these musical, you type in a word and it'll make a song for you and it'll sing and stuff like that. Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like cool, but from a musician's perspective, it's almost offensive. It's like, man, I try so hard and I had to learn years to play guitar, and this machine knocked out this guitar solo in half a second, right? Doesn't make it's not the same as listening to Gary Clark Jr. play it in live and watching
Gary
him,
Clark Jr. We went to the same high school. He's
Oh, yeah.
amazing. Well, I'm a lot older than him, so
he's the homie, man.
He's awesome.
He's amazing. But and so there is that. But I do think that we have this conception, as particularly with movies and stuff, that it's like we are trying to create humans exactly as we are, and trying to kind of to square this round this square kind of thing, however you want to call it, whatever analogy is, just to shove this square peg into this round hole kind of thing. And I think that the part that I'm curious about is this kind of notion of we're accelerating towards evolution of how sentient thought happens, and how, if we think of, if our brains are similarly difference engines and stuff like that. Like I always talked about how, like, I always think about terms of like why our brains are so categorical and why our brains are so compartmentalized in a lot of ways. And like, because I was like, it makes sense. I remember reading, and this was early on and during the more of the election cycle, and this conversation about how it's actually like physically painful, or it wasn't described as painful, but as physical damage when you have to change your mind. Like when you have something that's been drilled into your head, and you're getting presented with opposing information, and then for you to like break those neural connections to say, I was wrong. There's actually a physically damaging thing. And I was like, yeah, evolutionarily, it makes sense because if your brain is completely capricious and fleeting, you would that person wouldn't survive very long because you should learn that once I burn myself, that fire is always going to be hot, and I shouldn't have to learn it 17
Right.
times. And
Right.
and if my uncle was killed by a tiger, I'm scared of everything with stripes. I don't know what killed them out there, and it's like I just remember those stripes. And now if I see a
Right.
zebra, I'm going to be hesitant for a second,
Right. Right.
you know. And I think that that's a very natural, logical progression of why someone's views are. And I think that a lot of times people's biases and things like that are this way. And so I think that from an AI perspective, if you're training this model to have certain information and point it in some way,
Mm-hmm.
well, then obviously it's going to, you can almost see it happen not almost, you see it kind of happen in real time. It's like I was talking about how like I can tell kind of the AI face now because of it's like just generically attractive human. Like, you know what I mean? It's like
Right.
ambiguously it leans towards this, whatever. And as I'd be so curious as to see if like if if we were able to compartmentalize it from region, if like if we only in an Asian region that had more Asian people in that, if it was only pooling from that picture
Right.
base, that generically attractive person would look this way. And right now, because we're in America and it's mostly Caucasian or whatever it is, and it kind of leans toward this way because those are it's in the sim.
Mm-hmm.
And then the only people's faces that are over and over and over again in media are celebrities who are all attractive in a certain way that we're looking for. And
Right.
and if AI existed, there's a God, what comedian was my friend is Patton Oswalt had his bit about how he's like, yeah, imagine if there was like the movie like Face Off or whatever that was in the 80s and we had plastic surgery or something. And I'm ruining his bit, he's gonna kill me. But it was this idea about like how he's like the attractive person at the time was they would be like Steve Gutenberg. And so like imagine if that technology existed.
Right.
We have a lot of people walking around looking like Steve Gutenberg around right now, right? Or looking like Tom Selleck because that was what's attractive at the time,
Right.
as opposed to a Kim Kardashian or whatever. Like this kind of face that is now the kind of standard of beauty at this stage right now.
Right.
And so, and I think that for me, I think that it's all super fascinating because I I'm a big sci-fi fan,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and then when you watch these dystopian or even semi-dystopian movies of like they're like children, like these, you know, and then as you're feeding it, as it's learning, whether or not what you provided access to, it will head one way or the other. It's like every movie that I can think about that shows this process starts off innocent and happy and cheerful, and then it starts to learn about human nature,
Mm-hmm.
and then it goes the wrong way. It goes the other way, and it comes to this realization that we need to be destroyed,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like this thing. It's like, you know, everything Ultron and the Avengers is like, yeah, we determined it's like you guys are useless. We have to kill all of you, or like Fifth Element, right? With she's learning about everything and gets to W and learns about war, and all of a sudden he's like, oh my God, you guys are terrible,
Right.
you know, whatever it is.
Right.
And so it's a lot of this kind of stuff that's really fascinating to me because I think it again, like, and it's so funny because we started this conversation off this way about your children.
Mm-hmm.
This shines a mirror on us.
Mm-hmm.
Like what we're training and what we're going to use AI for, what AI is going to think it's for, or what it's going to be leaning towards is a huge mirror on who we are as people,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and the ability, and if we can't even comprehend a way to use AI to benefit us any more than we can figure out how we can use our own brain to benefit us,
Mm-hmm.
because we're still trying to think of things to do that is very kind of small-minded, I think, that, you know, and I think
Right.
it takes a bunch of people who are looking for what's better for all,
Mm-hmm.
asking AI questions about how to solve world hunger, asking AI
Right.
how to do these calculations or whatever, what's the best way to do these things, as opposed to, hey, can we make this video of, you know, somebody getting kicked in the balls and you know, something stupid like that.
You just invoke the movie Idiocracy.
Yes.
All right. All right.
No, it absolutely. I showed that to my son and
Oh, that movie.
the
Yeah.
Idiocracy, because I think it's one of the most brilliant 10 minutes of any dystopian movie, is because it really shows that it takes effort for us to evolve now because we don't have natural predators other than ourselves, and so
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
the what's passed on is intentional and it's
Yeah.
not accidental
Yeah.
anymore. It's not strongest survive. It is the survive. The people
Right.
who whatever it is, and so yeah.
Do
I
you do
mean,
you instruct the farmers to use electrolytes for?
that's the Brondo's what plants crave. Yeah, I think it's, and again, I think that we are. This is why these parlor tricks work.
Mhm.
This is why I remember reading an article about how they're like, stop saying please
Mhm.
into your chat box because it's causing processing power. It's like you don't need to, the amount of
Right.
processing power every time you're like, please send me a blah blah example of a
Right.
resume, and that word creates like an
That's so
extraordinary
funny.
amount.
Yeah.
And that-
It's much better though because we don't want to lose our human touch
yeah,
even when we talk with a machine.
yes,
It's
but
much better to be polite.
I'll still do it. I was like,
Turn
hey,
in
look,
your
when we have to, when the Terminator does come, he'll remember that I was polite to him. But
This guy CK was the nicest human being on earth. So I'm gonna spare him.
yeah,
Oh, unfortunately I didn't leave him a mate, so it's
yeah,
he's the last one.
no, but yeah, it's like this. I think that we should use it as a mirror. I think that we should use it as a saying that we are at, like you said, at the precipice, at this horizon
Mhm.
of what, of this child, of
Mhm.
this,
Mhm.
of the beginning of intelligence.
Mhm.
And again, it's very top of mind for me because I have toddlers, and I'm starting to see, and it's interesting because now in real time, if you're aware enough and you really kind of stare at your kids enough and you're like, where did she get that? Where did she
Mhm.
learn that? And
Mhm.
it was it for me, or all of a sudden we're looking, and it was like making these connections where I remember my daughter started to say no,
Mhm.
and I was like, cool, she's learning no. And I was like, as to me, I was like, I want her to know the power of her no. I want her
Mhm.
to be
Mhm.
like, her no has power,
Right.
and her autonomy is important. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, she learned it from Peppa Pig. Like I was watching her watch Peppa Pig, and Peppa Pig is
So
teaching her this. He's
yeah.
like Peppa Pig was saying no about something, and so she was just learning that, and I was just
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, because I really don't tell her no very
Yeah.
much. I just don't. I mean, she doesn't ask for things that I don't need to tell her no for,
Yeah.
generally. But I'm like, where's she learning this and stuff like that? And so it's the same thing. I think that there's something funny about that. Even when I'm doing image creation for something, for graphic something for the restaurants or for something,
Right.
and the frustration where we're like, hold up, their left hand,
Right. Right.
like, and I'm like, oh my god, how
Yeah.
hard is that? Sit there and you're trying to get this
Right.
computer, to
Yeah.
do what you're asking it
Do
to
you
do.
use it a lot for your business?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I gave
I
an example on one of the episodes about if I had a hot dog stand, here's how I would use it. And the point that I was giving, it was with JD Messenger, is that for every single person, they could use it in a beautiful way to become far more effective
right.
at their job, finding customers, doing marketing, thinking of new ways to, in a hot dog stand context,
I use
create
it.
a unique hot dog.
I use it a lot to troubleshoot.
Hmm.
Like I use it to grammar check my posts or
Hmm.
something like that. A lot of times, I've used it to create. I'll put together a whole bunch of scattered thoughts and ask it to create that into a job description or something
Hmm.
for an ad, or run it into a job ad,
Hmm.
something like that. Um, I do think that it's necessary, like you said, to not lose the human aspect
Hmm.
of taking it and making sure that it's coming from the heart rather than it sounds like this generic thing. I think that there's there's beauty in flaws, and there's
Hmm.
beauty in phrasing and tone and cadence, and the way that I write versus the way that you write versus the way that he writes it. The AI will smush them all together and turn
Right.
into something, and I don't want to lose that necessarily. I use it for ads, you know. I think that some people, we've seen some pushback actually, some people that get a little bit like a little eye rolly when I post an AI video or something like that. And I'm just like, you know, it's fun. It gets an
Right.
eyeball. Your interaction benefits me anyways. And so I generally, I don't pay too much attention to it. But yeah, I think that it's a tool like anything else.
Mhm.
I think the moment that you shut off your brain and let that brain be the primary brain, I think is where the problem comes from. You know,
Mhm.
I think as a cook, if you wanted to get inspired by, like, I've used AI at home where, have you ever tried this where you like type in the ingredients that you have in your fridge and be like, what can I make for dinner?
Mhm. Mhm.
And he'll just like
It's
spit out some
amazing. Yeah.
ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, yeah. So
And it's searching all the publicly available recipes as well as privately available
right.
recipes because we know that it's ingested a lot of cookbooks
Yeah.
that
But then you're looking at sitting there going,
Yep.
well, it does make mistakes.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
no guarantee that this recipe, it looks like a real recipe, but it
Yep.
could taste like absolute shit.
Yep.
So
Yep.
still cook it and use your brain. It
Yep.
says 3.5 tablespoons of salt.
Right.
Seems like a lot. So you know, just make sure
Yeah.
you know, don't lose your brain. And
Right.
then, but I think that that tool is incredible.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's an
Yeah. That's what
incredible,
I think too.
you know, I think that a couple of places that have now that I, you know, don't necessarily agree with, which is the, um, a couple places have gone fully AI customer facing, you know, where you call support or you call, you know, whatever, or they're responding to your Yelp reviews and stuff using AI
Mhm.
and stuff, and you're just kind of like, all right, I get it, you know, save you time
Right.
and blah blah. But it's like, but then you're missing the hospitality side.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, now you're hoping that I don't want to deal with this upset customer, so I'm just going to feed it into the machine, and the machine will deal with it, and
Mhm.
I'll get a 50% conversion rate, and that's fine. You
Right.
know, but
Yeah.
as opposed to you interacting with this person, having this conversation, hopefully with this person, and really finding out what this person's grievance is, and not only trying to salvage just one experience, but can you be better as a restaurant for future?
Mhm.
That is the um, loop that you should be in,
Right.
is trying to better yourself, not to solve the problem of
Yeah.
a disgruntled employee or customer. It's like, well, how can we be better? How can we have less of these kind of
Mhm.
situations? How can we do that? But I mean, I think we are naturally tendency to be lazy, and I think that that once AI becomes more commonplace and easier to access, and more even, you know, standing on the shoulders of giants, to where like you no longer have to even understand how to write a prompt properly, or they'll guess you properly. It can even, like, now you can use this AI to generate a prompt that you plug into this AI, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then you start to stop using your brain. And I think that that's where you start to get idiocracy, and then you start to just kind of zone out.
Mhm.
And, you know, now these two machines are kind of talking to each other. And, you
Right.
know, whenever it's done, it comes a hit.
I mean, that's
Step.
that's literally everything. I mean, that's again getting back to the, the machinery. If you start to look at it as a machine, that also is starting to turn off your brain because you can lose your humanity in it. You can
Yeah.
forget about what actually got you there. Estee Lauder, always celebrated the the fact that she, the founder, was literally holding women's hands, looking at them in the eyes, behind the counter. Like it was really a personal touch. So it's their way of like reminding
Yeah.
that's what they're all about. One thing I've always wanted to ask you about is like, where do you get your inner strength? Because like you're unusually advanced out of all of the people I know in terms of how I mean, you have a presence and wisdom in you, which is unusual, and a lot of my friends that are to that level, they've usually walked a spiritual path. I don't know what your spirituality is, or if you have spirituality, or if it's stoicism, or what is it that made you this way?
I don't know. You know, I joked with my family. I told my wife one time, I remember I found a journal of mine from like middle school. And I was talking about how, like, if aliens came by and told me that, my bad, we dropped you off, this is the wrong place. To- to-
That's
you,
so funny.
I would be like, that tracks.
That tracks.
Because sometimes I feel like when I think a certain way, and I feel like I'm the crazy one because I'm like, am I the only one that thinks this way?
All
Is
right.
this so fair? It's like this foreign? It's like this feels so against the grain from the grain that I'm looking at. Um, family, and I've been, from a spiritual journey perspective, I remember I had a good friend of mine who was about as atheist as you can possibly get. And one of the conversations always was because this person worked very hard. And so everything was very expected. I worked hard. I got a good grade because I studied my ass off. It was A, B, C, like boom, boom, boom. And I remember how I was like, yeah, no, there's something there. I have this kind of appreciation for some level of the metaphysical beyond this kind of situation because the things have happened to me that I don't deserve and things that have happened to me that I haven't earned, and I feel like there's this kind of thing. And my parents were always very, or not my parents, my grandparents and my mother, where they were the strongest people I've ever known. We were dealing with a lot of adversity and I had this internalized need to not disappoint or to squander their work. And I don't know, I think if I were to try to distill it into any sort of thought process, I remember as a kid, there was a lot of that going on, which was just this, like, having my opportunity to go to a theater rap party after a play and everyone there, and we're in high school and everyone's drinking and partying. And I was just like, man, if we get in trouble here and my mom's got to come pick me up from jail or something like that, she would break her heart. Like it would, and I was just like, I couldn't do that. It just was not in this kind of sense of that. There's this, I don't want to say this burden of that. And and I remember my mom instilled upon me really early, probably earlier than she should have, but this kind of mentality where I remember her saying something like, she's like, yeah, CK, it's like, you're born in America, you're American, but, but nobody is going to look at you as an American. He's like, you're going to be Chinese. I mean, he's like, and so what you do will represent not only you, but also your people. And she's like, so if you're lazy, they're going to think Chinese people are lazy. And if you're rude, they're going to think Chinese people are rude. If they're, all this stuff. And she's like, you have to be careful. All your actions represent you, your people, your family, your culture.
Right.
It's like, no pressure, And I just remember it resonating with me. I don't even know if she was joking at the time, or she was just kind of, but it wasn't this serious conversation. I just remember it just resonated in my brain. And I just do remember this, like this notion that we are this kind of integrated people, and that is true. Like people will always look at you a certain way, and then you have to combat that, and they will always have certain predispositions towards you or prejudgments against you or for you or your benefit or against you or whatever it is, and then for you to have to be very open-minded and meet them where they are. And I think, I don't know, but other than that, I think ultimately I just feel, leave the place better than you found it. If we all just did a little bit of care of the people in your vicinity, and if we all just did that, we'd be a better place. It's like a lot of, many hands make light work kind of mentality. Live by example, I think, is something that I've always resonated towards. All these things, it's like I don't know, I've had this always been a very strong part of my mindset. There's a
Now, if every human being did that, then I would be 100% certain that we're going to make it to the age of abundance for all. Literal.
yeah.
It'd be-
And I've told this story. It's funny. I tell this story on podcasts a lot, but I love it, and I hope it goes. I hope everyone hears the story. But there's this story that I read about, basically, imagine like Dante, or imagine this guy being able to go to hell, and he was going down there. He was able to visit, and he sees this table, this big giant brown beautiful table. Everyone's sitting around it, and this table full of amazing food, just table full of food, and they were like, this is hell, this is weird, and it seems very elegant. It seems great. And everybody there eating has these like 6-foot long chopsticks. And so when you grab it, like you can't eat. That's the torture, right? And then he's like, wow, that is torturous. And then gets in, they go up to heaven. And to his surprise, he goes and sees the exact same setup. Big giant table, everyone's sitting around there, 6-foot long chopsticks. And then he says everyone in that table was feeding each other. So everyone just takes this chopstick and reaches over to the person over there and feeds everybody. Same scenario, same situation. You just take care of each other. And then you really think about it. It's like you have 10 people at that table, 9 people are feeding you and you're feeding 9 people, but you have 9 people watching your back if you're just watching everyone else's back. You know, and that's the way I tell my family that. I tell my kids that. I'm sitting there and saying, look, you know, you've got my son, my daughter in the middle, and my youngest son. And I'm like, this is the 3 of y'all. But it's like, if you watch each other's back, then you got 2 other people watching your back. This is period. You all got this. It's like a triangle. There's a very strong structure, you know? And so, I don't know. That's something that it just really resonates for me, that it's just like, and you know what? And this is something I now that I say it out loud, I have also a very strong aversion or almost like hatred towards like hypocrisy, like this injustice. How about that? Or whatever you want to call it. Because I just remember it's like, if I'm driving down the road and someone cuts me off and I just lose it at them and I'm like criticizing them and mad at that person, and somewhere in the back of my brain, I'm like, I'm never allowed to cut anybody off ever again. Because if I get mad at that, then that would make me a hypocrite. And that permeates a lot of who I am.
Boy, that's interesting.
And it's an interesting thing, because when opportunities come where I judge someone unfairly or too quickly or harshly or whatever, then my instinct immediately is to go, ooh, should I have done that? How would I have felt if someone did that to me? And that kind of stuff, you know. It happens a lot, obviously, now, as divisive as things are. A lot of times when somebody just goes and puts a blanket across somebody with some sort of moniker or some sort of label, and then I just go, man, that's like, but in their circles, when I walk into that room, I also carry a very strong label. So as much as I despise that, then who am I to do the exact same thing to them? And so I think that there's a lot of drive and obligation and weight for me to balance those scales, to try to be like, no, I may presume that I know why you feel this way, why you think this way, or why you are this way, but that's really arrogant of me to do that. And so lead with learning, lead with curiosity, lead with empathy, and learn more. And then at the end of that, I can go, yeah, I was right. I don't like you. You know, but for me to make that judgment beforehand is really arrogant. It's really, and it's bad, and you shouldn't do that. And I think that's the one step that is all that matters. That for all we are and for all that's going on right now, if we all took the step, sit there and go, no, I learned everything I need to learn about this person, and I determined I still don't like this person, then that's your right. But the idea that you went and you determined all that without getting any information about this person, I think is fundamentally flawed. I think it's going to lead us the wrong way. And it doesn't lend towards abundance for all. It doesn't lend towards this inclusionary kind of thought process. You know, I question, you know, like you said, you have to justify, and it's so with, and you say words matter, you have to clarify when you say all, that you're starting to point out traditionally marginalized people, because I think we're trained that all doesn't mean those people generally, you know, and that's just internally, or just this habit. And it's the same thing. I feel the same way. As anytime somebody says we, or some say us or whatever, I'm like, oh, who is we? Who? When you say we, who do you mean we? Is me we? Like, am I part of your we? You know, kind of thing. And these are things that.
This is why I define it, you know, so clearly. Like, that's why I talk about Chad. There was one friend that was criticizing me for saying Chad. He's like, hey, you know, what about all the people suffering in America? And I'm like, well, of course I care about them, but all means all. It means all human beings. And frankly, you know, the way I'm wired is it also means all the animals. It means it
All
means
living
this
things.
planet,
Yeah.
this beautiful jewel that we live on.
And that's the other thing, it's like I think that we have to revisit our idea of what abundance is,
Mhm.
right? Because I think opulence, gluttony, and all
Mhm.
that stuff tends to be closer to what people think about as far as abundance,
Mhm.
right? It's this
Well,
notion
that's
that
what we're marketed.
that's right.
We're
Um,
marketed that.
and so I think that even when I talk about abundance mindset is the ability to be okay with less,
Mhm.
the ability to be okay and understand that I've had enough,
Mhm.
that this is imbalanced because of this. I mean, every single time the number of avocados that I've thrown away in my life because I don't get to them fast enough.
Mhm.
And then I'm just like, why in the world can I not learn to buy the amount that I need? Like just so recognize this kind of stuff. And it's
This
like
is your
these,
chronic problem,
well, it's just,
over avocado
well,
buying.
well, for me, it's
I'm
more of
just
like, it is, but it is more of like, is this like, I'm like trying to solve one problem and creating another. And the
right.
one problem is convenience and not wanting to come back to the store and being lying to myself and thinking that I'm going to cook
Mhm.
this in this amount of time rather than be honest with myself and realize that no, as I have an extremely busy week, this is not realistically, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do, you know what I mean? And so whatever it is, like understanding who you are is also very much part of that. And so I think that even this mindset that there's plenty, there's no need for us to like, food is one of the biggest things where like we are at huge imbalance with the amount of food that's produced and that we use for our own consumption. It's like we look upon a grocery store that sells out of something as poorly run,
Mhm.
whereas arguably this is the way it should be.
Mhm.
They should run out of things.
All right.
Like
All right.
that means they ordered just the right amount. Like
Right.
this is
Right.
the amount that they needed.
Right.
Um, you know, we don't understand as Americans, we don't understand seasonality at all.
Mhm.
Wow, when in the world am I getting strawberries in December? Where am I getting strawberries in December? The strawberries that shouldn't be growing. So they're a summer thing. Tomatoes end. There's a season for that.
Mhm.
And for us to have access to tomatoes year round seems imbalanced
Mhm.
because that's just not how the earth is supposed to function and
All right.
stuff like that. And so, but I think when you say abundance mindset is that the people's thought process is like, I can have tomatoes anytime I want,
Mhm.
rather than this mentality of saying like, no, we should be in a sustainable, functional thing and live in a society that we are all a little bit better about making sure that we don't need an unlimited amount of everything forever,
All right.
because that's just not true.
Mhm.
And so that's the kind of stuff that I think that um, if we all took a second and thought about it, it'd be better. But that's where we're at. I mean, I think that I mean, going all the way back to your question, I think that there's this heavy um, I want to play my part in
Mhm.
in this in this place. I want to make the place better. I want to make the people around me better. I want to be around people that inspire me. And so in order for that to happen, I have to be open to being inspired. And I think that there's kind of things, I think a lot of these things are verbs and not nouns. I think that love needs to be a verb and not a noun,
Right.
right? I think it needs to be action oriented, and you're not particularly, you can be an empath all you want, but if you don't take that empathy and turn it into action, what good does it do? If you watch a video about some starving kids and it doesn't motivate you to go do something and change something about either the way who you are or the way something else should be, what good is that? And so a lot of that stuff is the drive that
Yeah.
keeps me
Yeah.
going.
Well, me too, brother. I love
Yeah.
this. I love your heart and just love our friendship and love the beauty that you put in the world and the beauty you put into the food and the beauty you guys put in the service. It's amazing.
And thank you. No, it's beautiful. I love these, and this is it too. It's these conversations, recorded or not, need to happen more
This is
often.
it. Yeah.
We have, that is what I would say, like is going to. I mean, I hope it never goes away. Like I hope that no amount of AI will. It's like I hope that the AI will take care of the difficult things, and that we could have more time for this.
I
Like,
really, I
if
really,
and if that's what we're looking for, then I would say, yeah. If I don't, why don't let me teach an AI how to do a spreadsheet,
yeah,
so that I can
right.
do that, so I can spend more time with my employees, so I can spend more time with my customers and do that, like,
That's
and do
where I
that kind
think
of stuff.
spinning it out. It's, and I also think paradoxically, this this movement towards AI and quantum computing and robots and like this acceleration is actually going to lead to the rediscovery of what makes us the most human.
Oh yeah,
And we'll almost get back to the communal times where paradoxically we were dealing with such scarcity that all we had was each other. When I was in the Grand Canyon, I mentioned that earlier. We didn't have electricity. We didn't have phones. Yeah, I mean, the phones don't work. And all we had was each other. And when all you have is each other, really beautiful things happen.
yeah.
That brings out the best in
And
humanity.
you don't realize you fall right back into it,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it is something very, but it starts with that. It starts with
Yeah,
human connection. It starts with intentional connection. It
yeah,
starts
yeah.
with, like, if you're watching this right now and there's somebody that you haven't talked to or someone crossed your mind, I make it a point of myself. And again, it's a little thing and it's still not the best, but man, if someone crosses my mind as I'm driving down the street and I see a billboard and it just reminds me of them, like, I reach out my phone and I reach out
Yeah,
right then.
yeah,
I don't think about it later. I don't talk about it later. If I have a chance, especially if I'm stuck in traffic, I'll call them.
yeah.
Like, it's just like it it doesn't get easier. You don't get less busy. You're not going to have
Right.
that thing, and so you have to intentionalize that and say that this is important
Yeah,
and you're important, and I have nothing. I don't need to say anything. You just crossed my mind. And I think it's valuable that you know that that you crossed my mind today.
exactly.
That's it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and if everyone did that, you know, I just think the world would be a better place. I
yeah,
really think so. And again, selfishly, I created a business that allows for that to happen.
yeah,
And so I think that I'm hoping that more people can do that, and and then we get back to a point where,
yeah.
like, we really connect again.
Well,
So.
CK for president, it started here on
Oh my God.
here. Hey, brother, I love this, man.
Yeah, man.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for all you put out there in the world.
No, I appreciate it.
Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in to Love Conquers Fear. Stay tuned. A lot of exciting discussions coming up. And I appreciate all of the shares you're giving, all of the beautiful comments. I got this huge letter yesterday talking about people reaching out that just expressed so much love for how this podcast has really shifted their heart, and it was just amazing. So that type of stuff fuels me. I am also a human being, and I'm doing this. I'm self-funding it. I'm doing this to really create a heart shift in humanity, and we do that, we're going to make it to the age of abundance for all. Thanks again for tuning in.